The ones that are thick all have a 1 on them. All right, so let me go here. All right, so all of the icings that are thick have a 1. If you haven't already, make sure to massage the thin ones. So the ones that don't have a 1 on it, you might see a little bit of color separation. So make sure that you go ahead and just massage those to incorporate the colors. It's just completely normal that after a couple of days of unuse, they just get a little bit separated. So you'll want to take all of those and massage them with your fingers a little bit. All right, the thick ones here, these ones are going to be used for outlining and detailing. Okay, the thin ones are what's called flooding. We're going to put that thin icing inside, and that's the term is flooding. And your thick icing acts as a barrier, and then your thin icing goes inside of that, and that's called flooding. The thin icing is just watered down a little bit. It's a lot runnier. However, the thick icings, I also always make them a little bit thinner because I know we have beginners. So I make them thinner than I normally do for myself because people often, their hands kind of cramp up, and I just want to make it easy for you. So you will notice that it might be a little bit thinner, the thick ones, but still give us the exact details and the strength of the icing that we need. Okay, so we have 2 for some of these colors. Just put all of the ones that have a 1, take those and put them to the right or the left to kind of differentiate between the 2. All right, and then the other ones, put them on the other side. Okay, first thing we're going to do, I'm going to teach you how to hold the icing bag. Okay, this is kind of important, but not as important as some of the other skills that I'll teach you. But we will be working with our worksheet first, so you can have that handy. The way that I hold the icing bag, and you can surely do it another way if you would like, but I push all of the icing down, and I have the knot here. I'm going to place my hand underneath it. So I'm going to place this right into my palm, but the knot's going to be above my hand. Okay, and then I'm going to bring my thumb over, and then I tuck it in, and this is actually pressing, my thumb is pressing into the icing, which is pressing into my palm, and that's going to help me get a good squeeze. So you always want to squeeze from the top down, and then make sure you're always above the icing. So we don't want to be like down here. We want to be above it here. Okay, so I tuck my thumb in, and then I rest my fingers over like so. Okay, and then your hand is actually going to be upright. So you're not laying it flat, you're keeping it upright. And when we pipe, we always keep our wrist up off of the table. So the hand with the icing, your elbow is down on the table, but your wrist is up. And the purpose for that is because we want to let that icing drag onto the paper, and we don't want to be like riding and like pressing the bag to the paper. You always just let it drag onto the paper. And that's what we want to do. So we keep that wrist up, and then you take your finger on your non-dominant hand, and you're going to place it either at the tip of the icing or like on your wrist or your hand. That's going to steady you a little bit as you're moving. Sometimes you get a little bit shaky. Take your finger to kind of steady it and give you a little bit more control when you're doing this. Okay, now we're going to cut this icing bag. However, first I'm going to kind of show you a couple of tricks, because how you cut it is very important, because we don't want to cut off too much of the plastic. All right, grab my scissors. Okay, so I'm using my lines as a scale. So if I line up the very, very tip at that first line, what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut about halfway from this first line to the second line. So if I have the tip right at the first line, I'm going to cut halfway. Let me see if I can show you. I'm going to cut off about that much to the right of the toothpick. Okay, so you're cutting off very little amount. You don't want to cut too much. You want to be about half, because you can always cut off a little bit more if you need to. But we don't want to take a whole chunk off and then be like, I have too big of a hole, what do I do now? So we're taking the bag that has a 1 on it, the thick white, and you can use this to scale and then cut half. I'm gonna bring it up, I know how much it is, but you can always, you know, just kind of eye it, or you can keep it close, but cut off half of the width that's between these 2 lines here. And now we're ready to rock and roll on our worksheet, and as we go, I'm going to give you pointers for it. All right, so we have holding it just like I showed you, and then you only touch when you start and when you stop. My line just broke, so I was moving a little too fast. So you touch it with your tip when you start, then you lift your hand up and you let it drag, and then when you're done, you're gonna touch the paper to end. All right, so you touch, lift up, let it drag, touch to stop. If you have completely covered your black line and you don't see the black line underneath, then you cut the right amount. That's good. You'll kind of know when that line is too big. If you cut too big of a hole, you'll kind of see that. But you just don't want to be like covering almost 2 lines, which if you followed my instructions, you probably didn't. You're probably more like this. You want to just cover that line completely. And then the key is letting it drag and not going too fast. If you go too fast, you're going to break that icing line. Make sure you're letting it drag. So if your tip is touching the paper, just lift your wrist up a little bit, and you're going to be between 1 centimeter to 1 inch above the paper or the cookie, and just let it drag on. So we're gonna do the worksheet. This is in hopes that you will feel better to do it on the cookies if this is your first time. If this is not your first time, it's just good practice. I've probably done 100 of these worksheets, and each time it's just good practice. The other cool thing about the outline is this is the only time that if you mess up, you can erase it and do it again. So if I don't like how one of these lines looks, I can take it, I can just scrape it off, and I can do it again. So this is probably the most forgiving part, is because you can just wipe it off and do it again. But when you get to the detailing, that's the very least forgiving part of all. But we are going to do the whole worksheet. So as you're doing this, I just want you to be mindful of how you're holding the icing bag, and also being mindful that we are letting it drag onto the paper. We're not touching the paper with the tip. And then just kind of get used to how it feels. It's kind of a strange thing. It's definitely not like writing. It's very, very different. And just sort of practice the hand-eye coordination and what it takes to really get the flow of it. It's not easy, but it's just one of those things you just practice and it feels great. And we'll do the squiggles. The circles are going to be the hardest. If you cut your hole a little too small, this would be a good time to take a little bit off, cut a little bit more off so that your line is completely covering the black line. And as you can see, I'm not always putting my finger on the tip. That's only because I have a camera right here and it's kind of blocking me. So when I actually do it, you know, on my own, I always put my hand either at the tip or on my wrist to steady myself. Disclaimer again, if anything goes wrong, if if it's really glitchy, if you lose connection, I'm recording this and it will not be glitchy on YouTube. I'll upload it to YouTube tonight and it'll be ready tomorrow. So if that does happen, just want to say disclaimer, you can always head over to YouTube tomorrow. All right, the circle is the hardest because it's perfect on our worksheet, but it is really hard to get a perfect circle. We do have a circle in the class. It's going to be the sun cookie, so it would be especially good to practice this circle. So do both circles for extra practice. And then the good thing with the thick icing, you can use your toothpick to sort of manipulate it a little bit. Like if I want to push it or drag it, sometimes I take it where like the starting point and the stopping point meet. I'll take my finger or my toothpick and kind of like smash it down a little bit if there's a peak. So there's a couple of things that you can do here. Hey Kathy, I see you. How's it going? So like my top of my circle is not quite perfect, so I can take my toothpick and sort of move it if I want to without having to wipe it off and do it again. So I don't know if I already said this, but I recorded this video yesterday night. I had everything set up, all my icings, all my cookies. I recorded it on YouTube and I went to upload it and it said it wouldn't upload. And then because I recorded it through YouTube, it erased my video. And so what I had to do today was scramble to make icings again and cookies. And so yesterday I had vanilla cookies. And I had Kim bought them, a customer friend, whatever. She bought them, and I was like, okay, well now I'm gonna do chocolate because that's my favorite, and we're gonna do chocolate. And I think that the colors of the icing will kind of like stand out more. I've never taught a class with chocolate cookies before, but I think it'll kind of make the colors sort of pop a little bit more to be fun. Okay, so the heart, I got a little sidetrack. Heart. I'm gonna show you how to do the dots, and then we're actually not going to do the writing part because we have the writing worksheets for later. But I will show you the little dots here. Okay, two ways that you can do this. One, you can outline the circle and then flood it with the same icing bag. Or you can stick it right in the middle and squeeze until you get the right width. And that's what I prefer. That's what we're gonna do with polka dots later on the swimsuit. But I'll show you both. So the first one is going to be like an outline. And then you just go ahead and fill it with the same bag. Or you can stay right here in the center, squeeze and squeeze and squeeze, kind of squiggle it a little bit till you get the right width. I prefer that, so that's what I do, but whatever floats your boat, whatever you want to do. And we will do this on the polka dots, so maybe try doing it with the second technique that I'm doing here. And we don't have the hearts. I'll show you the hearts, but we don't actually have hearts for this, but I'll show you what I do for the hearts as well in just a moment. All right. So for the hearts, I like to do it's two parts. I do 2 teardrops and I drag them to meet at the bottom. So I come here and I go at the top and I squeeze until I have the right width, and then I take it and I just drag it down. And then I do the same thing on the right side. I squeeze and then I drag it to meet the other side. squeeze and drag, squeeze and drag, squeeze and drag. You end up with these very clean looking hearts. It's a lot neater than if you were to outline them and then flood it. Very quick and easy. Squeeze, 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 and then drag down. Squeeze, drag down to meet the other one. All right. Dad, we may be missing a cookie to decorate because we want to eat one. Well, hey, Dad, you were the only male to take the class, so I added the little swim trunks for you. So if you want to eat your bikini, you can do that. Okay, that's all we're going to do on the worksheet. Hopefully that helps. Hope you feel a little bit better with just the outlining part of it, which is where we'll start. Let's put this aside and we're going to keep the white icing with the one on it. And the first cookie we're going to grab is our Hello Summer. So that one, I'll show you it. It's this. Okay, the Hello Summer will turn from this to this. Hopefully. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is the white part that is going to be on the top. First, we need to outline it, and then we can flood it. You have a good indication of where the line is going to start because you have the banner here, and so we know we are going to draw a straight line across. We can take our toothpick, if this helps, and we can line it up and we can say, okay, that's going to be, you know, because a little bit of hand-eye coordination go from one side to the other, but the hardest part really is just that line, and then we're going to outline the rest of the top. So white, you're going to start over here, and then we're going to come across. All right, so do that first step there, if you're with me here. And then just go ahead and do the top, the rest of the cookie here. Just implementing exactly what we practiced. And you don't have to do it all in one, you know, fluid motion. If you want, you can kind of do it in segments. If you need a break or you kind of have trouble changing direction. And then of course, as well, if you mess up, just wipe it off and do it again. I'll give you a little bit of time to do that. Okay, so anytime you do the outline, you want to wait a little bit of time before you do the thin one because you do want that barrier to dry just a little bit. You know, 1 to 2 minutes. As I'm talking, it's drying, right? So that's good. But we will grab our thin icing. If this is your first time, never done this before, I would suggest watching me do it first. And then you can take a stab at it. But I will show you what I do, kind of give you tips as I go. You'll need your toothpick, and then you'll need your thin white bag, which we haven't cut yet. So that's going to be the one that does not have the line on it. Okay, you'll need this. Now the cut this time, remember the worksheet, instead of cutting half of the width between those two lines, we're going to cut a whole, you know, width of from one line to the other. So here we are, we line it up. I'm going to cut from that first to that second line. That same width is about what I'm going to cut for the thin icing. So you do cut a little bit of a bigger hole for the thin. And then just make sure that that little plastic tip doesn't fall into your cookie. That has happened before. All right. And then what we do for the thin is we're going to start on the outside. I'm going to get close to the edge without going over. And then I'm going to spiral inside. Now, as I fill the cookie with icing, I want it to look like a pillow on top of the cookie. I want to put enough in that I don't see the cookie underneath. I also don't want to put in too much that it's going to overflood. We don't want that. So that's why I go close to the edge, but not like all the way to the edge for beginners. And then you just take it all inside. You use your toothpick to spread it and pop any air bubbles. So if your first time, you can watch me here for a minute. All right, so I get pretty close to the edge. For beginners, I say don't go like all the way to the edge because there is the risk of overflooding. But then when I fill it inside, I don't want any gaps at all. I'm putting a good chunk in there, right? Now I use my toothpick and I kind of swirl it and drag it to the edge. I have about 2 minutes until this starts to dry. But if you put in enough, you know, you'll be totally fine with that time frame. The problem is that a lot of times people don't put in enough, so then they're sitting there with the toothpick forever. And so just put in enough, and then it takes about 20 seconds to spread it, and then you're good to go. And then you don't want to touch your icing at all. It's already starting to harden. Mine is right now, so I don't want to mess it up. So I just leave it be. Once it's all spread, you just want to back away and let it start to dry. Okay, so if you haven't already, go ahead and give it a go and let me know how it goes. I'll wait about a minute for you. The chocolate cookie is a good kind of indicator if you put enough in, because since the cookie is so dark, if I were to put in that white icing and I didn't put in enough, I would see that dark chocolate cookie underneath. And so most of the time, you know, beginners will either put in too much icing and then it's overflowing, or they'll put too little and you can see the cookie underneath. The chocolate one is kind of a good representation of how much did you put in. If you can see the chocolate, then you didn't put enough in. But all right. So, I think we're going to do, it's funny, I just taught this class last night, and now I'm already second guessing, what do I want to do next? It's like I just taught it last night, but every class I do a little bit different. So we are gonna let this dry, and then we'll go and do the banner in just a moment. So we want to very carefully move this over to let it dry so that our direct workspace has the bikini, our swimsuit, but very carefully move him over to dry. You're gonna notice, if you've never done this before, there's a lot of moving and grooving and steps with this because you have to kind of like let the cookies dry before you do the details. So we're gonna be sort of working in stages, and then our first cookie will not really be complete until an hour from now, which sounds kind of crazy, but that's just how it goes. It needs a little bit of time to dry. All right, so the next one we've got is our bikini. Gonna look like this. So we need our blue, our thick blue. Okay, thick blue. Thick has the 1 on it. So grab the blue with the 1. All right, we're gonna cut that small hole. Remember, half the width of the 2 lines on our worksheet. Try not to make it too big. You can always cut a little bit more if you need to. And then what we're going to do is the outlining first. Let's start with the simpler one. Oh, forgot to tell you, so I sometimes forget to mention things and I remember as we go. When you cut this icing bag, it's a flat kind of line, so you want to run your fingers kind of down the sides of it to make sure that it's a hole and not a flat line. So just kind of run your fingers across it and then it'll be a hole. And then sometimes before I use it, I take a napkin and I just kind of test it out, make sure it's coming out all right. Especially if it's been traveling through the post system, you want to make sure it's coming out all right. Okay, let's do the bottoms first. That'll be a little bit easier. We're just going to follow the edge of the cookie. Nothing, you know, crazy here. We're just gonna follow it. You can start wherever you want to start. It does not matter. As long as you have that barrier and you don't have any gaps or holes in it, we are just fine. Just want to make sure that we've got that barrier. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, and I'm just looking at it. I want to make sure that I don't have any holes anywhere. And mine in particular has a bump like right here. And so I'm just saying this, I don't know if it applies to you, but because my cookie is kind of raised right there, what I do is I outline right on top of it to kind of create a higher barrier, because I know that if I put the icing in there, it could overflow, and I don't really think it would, but I just do it just in case. It's worth it not to be frustrated, because the actual cookie right here has like a bump. So it might not apply to you, but if it does, cool. And that'll help out. Okay, while we're letting this one dry, we are going to outline this one as well. So here's what we're working with. This one's a little harder because you are creating your own lines. You have your outside, which kind of tells you where it is, but then you have to create your own lines in the middle. So the bottom part is going to mirror here. So we're going to do like a bow. We're mirroring what we see on the bottom. This part is going to be left bare, no icing there. We are going to do the little straps, and then we're also going to do the bow, which again, the bottom lines are just going to mirror what we see on the top. So it's going to be a little harder. I'm going to walk you through step by step, and we'll do the bottom section first. Okay, so if you want to watch me first, feel free. I'm going to do my first lines here. I'm just going to mirror what I see on the bottom. Okay, and go ahead and try that out. All right, might not be perfect. Don't worry, it's okay. We're going to finish it by just following the edge of the cookie here. Outline the bottom part. Okay, so it kind of looks like a bow tie, sort of. That's what we're going for. And we'll do the little straps and then the top bow. Okay. Hopefully I'm not moving too fast. All right. So the straps, very, very narrow. We follow the edge of the cookie. We see, you know, where the side part is going to be, and then it's about 1 centimeter wide. We're going to create that second line right there. Same thing on the right. So right and left, hopefully symmetrical here. And make sure that those lines are touching. Like, we don't want any gaps between the strap lines and the bow tie part. You know, you want to make sure it's completely closed in, because when you add that thin icing, you don't want it to like seep under or around that barrier. Good, Jenna. I'm glad it's going well for you. Good. That's always good to hear. These are so different than in-person classes. You know, I've taught so many in-person classes, of course, and before COVID especially, but it's, you know, it's different when you have people in a class and you can see them and ask questions and they raise their hands. So if you have any questions, just comment. I will be more than happy to help. Okay, the top part, I like to do the circle, the knot part first, because I like to say it gives me a reference point for where the right and the left side are going to be. So the knot is going to be right in the middle, medium sized, a little bit bigger than our worksheet 1. And what we'll do is we'll outline here. And we only have the 2 more segments to outline, and then we'll be ready to do the flooding, which is the best part, the most fun part. Okay, so the right and the left, we see where it is on the top and the side. We're going to come across, we want to connect it to the straps, and then back up to the knot. The same thing on the left side, okay? And then now we'll be ready to do the flooding. So flooding, if you look at the finished ones here, you can see that there are white polka dots. And the white polka dots, they're not two-dimensional, they're not raised, they are inside the blue. So there's a concept called wet on wet, which is where you put wet white icing into the wet blue icing, and because it's not dry yet, it all dries together. And so polka dots, you either love them or you hate them. They are a little bit tricky, but I will tell you the #1 trick, and that is when you go to add in the white, you want to make sure that the plastic tip of your white never touches the blue, because if the plastic tip, you go too far in and the plastic tip touches the blue, when you pull it out, you're going to pull up blue with it, and you don't get those very defined polka dots. And so I'm going to start on the bikini bottoms. I'm going to add in the blue, which means that we need to cut our thin blue, so make sure you get your thin blue. I'm going to show you first and then you can give it a go. I'll pause, let you try it. But your thin blue, we're going to cut it, put it in, and then while it's wet, I will show you the white polka dots and I will explain as I go, and then you can give it a try. Okay, so we have our thin blue. We're going to cut a little bit bigger, you know, than we did for the outline here. Everything is the same as far as getting this color in here. So I'm gonna go close to the edge, but not, you know, completely, if I don't wanna really over flood it. We, you know, don't have to be like, okay, you know, we gotta go, go, go. It's fine. We'll still have that 2 minutes and we'll be just fine with putting the polka dots in. So we'll get it all in. And then the polka dots, you can either do them, try to make them like perfect or symmetrical, or just random. If you go with random, it'll look a little bit like less perfect, but kind of like, it'll look like they were supposed to be like that. So again, you want to squeeze just a little bit, but you're going to squeeze until you have the right amount, and then you're going to pull it out, but you're never going to let that plastic tip touch the blue. So the icing that's coming out is obviously touching the blue. That's fine. You just don't want the plastic tip to touch the blue. You squeeze very, very lightly, and then you pick it up, and hopefully you get these circular, nice looking polka dots. But again, these are not really easy, so if you don't get them the first time, that's quite all right. And I don't know, I mean, I could add some more, but I think I'm happy with that, so I'm just going to keep it like that. I think that looks good, and I'm happy with that. All right, so if you haven't already, go ahead and give it a go here. Try out the polka dots, and then if you really, really love them or you really, really hate them, feel free to comment and let me know what you think about them. So wet on wet. Love the technique. When they dry all together, it makes it look so smooth. It looks better than if you put the polka dots on top when the blue is dry. It's a lot of fun. You can do it with any color, anything. You can do stripes. Stripes are a little hard. You can do hearts. You can, you really can do anything. People, you get really advanced. You can put little like pineapples in, wet on wet. You could do watermelons, and then later when it dries, you would go with like an edible marker and kind of define it a little bit. Super fun. One of my favorite techniques to do. So we're going to do the same thing on the top. However, we want these segments to stay like very separated, and the way that we do that is we all do alternating segments, and then we let those dry, and then when those are dry, we come back and do the rest. So what I mean by that, if you are totally confused right now, we're going to first do the same thing that we did on the bottoms. We're going to do it on the top, but we're only going to do these this bottom part, and then we're going to do the right and the left bow, but we're going to leave the straps and the knot blank. So we're going to do the same thing with the here that we did with the bottoms. So we've got our, bring it over, blue, white polka dots, and then right and left here, blue, white polka dots, and then we're gonna let it dry. So don't do the straps and don't do the knots. But thin blue, again, same thing as the bikini bottoms. If you really, really hate the polka dots, you don't have to do them here if you don't want to. If it looks like a hot mess and you just want to avoid it, of course, you are the artist. You don't have to do it. You can just leave it blue if you want. All right, white. For this one, I like to do a line of polka dots straight across down the middle first, and then I base my other polka dots kind of around it. Let's see. Definitely not the easiest thing as far as getting them to be perfect. I think the only reason why mine look good is because I've done so many polka dots. I've had a lot of practice, and that's pretty much it. Just practice. All right, and then we'll do the right and left little bows. And I think I put 2 or 3 polka dots on the bow part because it's kind of tiny. So you don't want to like overkill it, but your polka dots might be bigger or smaller than mine. So it just really depends what you want to do. I'll probably do 3 here. Okay, now once you get to this point, we'll let it dry a little bit. All of them are gonna dry, but we'll come back to the bikini top in a little bit. We're gonna grab our Hello Summer cookie and we're going to outline the banner in blue and then flood the banner with blue. So the white has dried enough that we can add that banner. We wanna do that. And then we'll come back to the bikini top. We'll do that blue with the polka dots, and then we'll move on to another cookie, which is always fun. We'll take a break from these, move on to another cookie, come back to them later to detail. So again, very carefully move them to the side. We're not done with them yet, but we are gonna come back to it. All right, and then we'll do our Hello Summer. All right, so this part's not super hard. You already have the banner there, you know, the lines. Just make sure when you grab the blue, you're grabbing the thick one that has a line on it. Okay, so always outline with the thick one. And we are going to hug underneath that white. And it's not like totally necessary. You could just keep just the white there, but sometimes I like to add a little extra barrier there. But if you find that it's too tricky to get it up that close, you definitely can bypass this step here. Mine is definitely not perfect by any means, but it will still suffice. And then when I get all that thin icing in, it'll kind of cover up my mistakes there. Okay, I'm gonna let it dry a little bit. I might clean up this top part here with my toothpick, maybe push it to the white a little bit. But once I give it a little bit of time to dry, maybe about 30 seconds, then I'll go ahead and add that blue. No polka dots this time. You're welcome. And then we'll let it dry some more. Okay, and then we'll add the writing at the end. Okay, so blue, thin blue. You should have enough blue. I'll show you in a minute, but we do have, I think we'll have enough blue for everything. We also have the bikini and we have the ocean, but you should have just enough, and a little bit of icing goes a long way, I'm telling you. It doesn't take much, and I try to kind of like plan it just right to where you have enough icing for everything, kind of perfectly. These corners, I'm going to use my toothpick to sort of get into the corners. All right. So let's let it dry. Okay, we got the banner. We'll be writing on them soon. And when I say soon, I mean in like an hour. Let's bring the bikini top back over here. The straps, I did not put polka dots on. However, I did put 2 polka dots in the middle. So, you know, you can, if you don't want to put polka dots in the middle one, then that's fine. But totally up to you. Again, we're gonna flood it, and it only takes a little bit. These are very narrow spaces, So you only need to drop in a little bit here. And of course you can use that toothpick if you want to drop it in. And then use your toothpick to spread it into those corners as well. I might add like 1 or 2 polka dots to the middle here. Maybe 1. I'll do 1. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. And then this one, we're gonna let it dry. Lots of steps to this. So we have our Hello Summer. Our swimsuit is drying. We want to give it as long as possible before we add those details. And then we'll move on to another cookie here. Let's see. The cookie that we're going to move on to, let's move on to the ocean one. Okay. All right, so for the ocean, this is what we want before and after to look like. We have a couple of things going on here. This is where you're gonna wanna get your little sand sugar sprinkles. And we're gonna use all of the sprinkles, all of these. We're gonna have these, you're probably gonna wanna cut it open here. I usually just kind of cut it right here. Just make sure they don't spill out. But have these ready to be used here. And we're going to take our tan colored icing. Now, you only have 1 of these, and you're probably thinking, why do I only have 1 if you're brand new? So there's 1 consistency of icing that is in the middle. It's a medium consistency. It's not too thick, not too thin, and it can be used for outlining and flooding. So it's just one icing, get it all done, flood and outline. So the first thing we want to do is cut that tiny hole, but you're cutting the small hole like you did for the outline with the worksheet. Cut the small hole, we're going to outline it, we're going to wait a little bit. Then we're going to flood it with the very same bag. We're not going to cut it any bigger. And then when it's still wet, we're going to add our sprinkles in. And the sprinkles kind of give it this texture sort of to look like sand. It's a lot just more fun than if we just did the tan. So I'll show you like the hardest part about this, which really isn't hard, is we're going to create these little squiggles here. And it's going to be a little bit more than halfway. So see, you're going to have a little bit more of the brown than the blue. And we're going to do these squiggles, which are going to be random. They're going to be just like waves in the ocean. So cut just that tiny hole, okay? And then somewhere, kind of a little bit more than halfway, you're going to randomly just kind of put these little squiggles. And if you're unhappy with the way it looks, wipe it off and do it again. But we're going to notice it's very, very thin compared to the thick one, right? So it comes out pretty quickly. It spreads a little bit, but it is perfect when you just want 1 bag, 1 consistency here. After you make your little waves, we're just going to close this semicircle here. And now we're going to let it dry. And while we're letting it dry, because this one is thinner, let it dry a little bit more. When I taught my class yesterday, my sand, when I put the sand on the icing, it kind of overflowed because the sand kind of makes it heavier and kind of push it down. So I want to wait for that barrier to dry because I do want it to be a little bit stronger, and in drying it becomes stronger, the barrier. So we're just going to wait a little bit, but while we're waiting, we can do our blue here. And all we need for that is our thick blue with the Sharpie line on it, and we're going to just close that circle with the thick blue. Make sure you hug that brown there, and then just outlining the top half of this to be our ocean here. And that'll give us a little bit more time for that brown icing here. Okay, so we've got our brown icing. We have our sprinkles. We're gonna flood the brown. The difference, so because this is a little bit thicker than our thin consistency, you don't want to use your toothpick at all. So you're gonna get it all in as quick as you can. And we don't want to use the toothpick to spread because we just don't have a lot of time, because it dries so much faster because it is thicker. And so we get this in, we don't use our toothpick, we want to close in all of those gaps, and then when it's all in, we have to kind of squeeze a little harder too, but once it's all in, then we'll just pour those sprinkles on top, and then we will have our sandy beach. So see how I am not using my toothpick at all? I'm going to completely get this icing in. Might be a little bit bumpy because it does take it's a little bit thicker. You could kind of tap it a little bit if you want, but since we're putting the sprinkles on, it's not totally necessary. This is gonna get messy, so don't be shy. Take these sprinkles and just sort of, for lack of a better word, sprinkle them on. Speaking of lack of a better word, I was here, my husband was setting up the computer for me for our live stream, and he accidentally kind of rolled onto my toe with his chair. I mean, obviously he had no clue, and it didn't hurt that bad, but of course I reacted and I said, "You just scrolled onto my foot." And he said, "I scrolled onto your foot like with a mouse?" And I was like, oh, I don't know why I said that, but I meant you rolled onto my foot. Oh my goodness. So don't be afraid, use all of them. We're not using this for anything else, so use them all. And it doesn't have to like perfectly cover it. It might not. And then, of course, all the sprinkles are kind of everywhere. We do want to kind of clean them off of the bare part of the cookie. We can also shake them off if we need to. And this might take some time. I know I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I'm going to try to kind of get them all off. But I know I might not be able to, which is fine. And if you happen to just kind of like literally wipe off the blue because you want to get the sprinkles off, I know that totally defeats the purpose of having done it in the first time. I taught it differently yesterday, so I guess that's what I get for doing something different. But now I'm gonna redo that outline. If you choose to do that like I did, just add that blue outline back in. Oh well, extra practice, right? The ocean is fun because, well, the ocean is fun in general, but the ocean is fun for this cookie because we're gonna add that same technique for the wet on wet. We're going to do with these little waves. If you choose to, I mean, obviously you don't have to. But I'm going to clean up this a little bit. Okay, my sprinkles still are kind of overflowing, but that's totally fine. It's not going to necessarily fall off the cookie, and if it does, like if yours did kind of fall off the cookie, if you wait for it to dry a little bit, you can sort of just like scrape it off. It really won't be a problem, and it only is that way because it's a medium consistency, so that barrier just isn't thick enough in like consistency to keep it all in. So again, if that happens, no worries. You can always kind of scrape it off a little bit if you need to. Okay, so I like to flip it so I can see it better. And so we're gonna have our thin blue. Our thin blue is gonna go in, and then we're gonna take our thin white and draw little squiggles randomly. Don't overdo it with the waves, just a few, and just kind of squiggle them in while that blue is still wet. Gives it a little bit of these little wave kind of look, but if you don't want to do it or you don't feel confident, that's fine too. When I go ahead and add all of this in, I am going to be right up into that beige color. Don't worry about it overlapping a little bit. If that happens, we're gonna hide it with the white later when we do the little waves, which will be also really fun and my favorite part. So get that blue right up next to the brown there. And then while it's wet, we can add with our thin white, if we choose to, little squiggles, just about a centimeter kind of long, not super long and not too many because we don't want to overdo it. Y'all still good? Been kind of quiet recently. I think whoever is on now is all of y'all are taking the class. I know most people do it pre-recorded, but okay, once you have this done, the sand and the ocean, we will let it dry again before we do the other detailing. But it is almost done, pretty much. We just want to add the details, the waves and the flip-flops later, but we have to wait for it to dry. So of course, we are going to put it in a safe spot, push it over somewhere where it'll be safe, and we'll let it dry. Okay. Now I've got like all these sprinkles everywhere. All right, 2 more cookies to do the flooding for. First one we're going to do is the long rectangle. The long rectangle is going to be our beach towel. The long rectangle is hopefully going to look somewhat something kind of sort of like this. I say that because of course the writing adds an element of challenge. So what we got here going on, wet on wet technique again, couple of polka dots, but we have 2 colors that we haven't used yet. So we do need to grab both bags of the coral and both bags of the yellow. I'm going to teach you step by step how to create sort of these squiggle lines and the polka dots, and then we're going to let it dry and we'll come back and do the little tassels and the writing later. Alright, so first thing we need is our thick coral, which is going to be that one, the line one, thick coral here, and then we also of course need our 2 that are yellow. And again, if you didn't do it in the beginning, make sure that the thin ones you kind of massage a little bit, incorporate all of that color so it's not separated. All right, first one we're gonna grab is our thick coral that has a line on it. Okay, we've done it a few times. We're gonna cut that little hole. Cut that little hole. Not too much off. And it went on my cookie, so I gotta make sure to wipe it away. I'm excited about these because I'm gonna eat these cookies. Well, not all of them maybe, but I'm going to eat some of them. And if my husband wants some, he can have some too. I love, this is my personal favorite, is the chocolate. Dark chocolate, super good, super rich. Love it. Okay, first thing we're going to do is the top and the bottom lines with the coral that is thick. Okay, we're leaving room about 1 centimeter for the tassels. And so the first things I want you to do are going to be a line here with 1 centimeter on the top, free. And then the bottom, a line. Just those 2 lines first. Those will let us have that room for the tassels there. Okay, so it'll all make sense. You might not kind of see it in the finished one, but it all makes sense with when I kind of start to do this. So about 1/2 inch wide. We'll start at the top. We're going to come down about 1/2 inch or so. And then you're just going to sort of squiggle. Doesn't have to be what I do, but you're going to have these big kind of waves here. It can be a totally different design. But since it's not like going to be a straight stripe, it'll give us a little bit of freedom to mess up. So if we have sort of like a wavy line, it doesn't have to be perfect, and it kind of takes some of that pressure off of us, you know? The bottom, same thing. We go about 1 centimeter or, in 1/2 inch, and then we're just gonna randomly, however we want, kind of create a little wave, squiggle. My dad said we are still here just working hard, and Jenna, you liked it, which means you probably agree. Like, I got no time to comment. I gotta concentrate. Kudos to y'all for doing an advanced class. Of course, I didn't advertise it as advanced because I just teach, step by step, so I don't necessarily say this is an advanced class, this is a beginner. But I'm sure y'all are doing great. I'd love to see your creations afterwards. All right, sticking with the thick coral, there's going to be one more segment in the middle. Same thing. We're going to do kind of like squiggles on both sides, however you want. It doesn't have to be perfect, but somewhere in the middle, and then up like above it and below it's going to be yellow. So we just want about 1 inch or so. And we're just going to randomly kind of put these little waves here. Well, that one I made a little straight, but that's fine. All right, we got a little bit of time. With the ones that are gonna be in the middle is gonna be yellow. We don't need to create the barrier right next to the horizontal lines here. All we're gonna do with the thick yellow is just close in these 4 gaps. That's it, because when we go and put in the colors, the coral and the yellow, we're gonna put like coral, yellow, and what it's gonna do is it's gonna be right next to each other. We're gonna be totally fine if we overlap because it's sort of like the wet on wet technique. When it dries, it's gonna kind of dry together, and it'll look more like a uniformed beach towel rather than being like block segments. And so that'll help us kind of keep that uniformity. So we'll have our yellow with the line on it, thick yellow. Cut a tiny hole again, not too tiny, but not big. Hopefully you've kind of figured out how to cut it. It's one of the hard things. I've definitely tried to practice how to best teach that. My very first class, I didn't have the worksheet. I didn't really teach how to cut it. I was so nervous. I basically just said, okay, cut the bag and let's go. And people cut like just, giant holes in it. And so lesson learned, I never did that again. And then I implemented the worksheet probably about 6 classes in, and it was great. But hopefully, you know, that you have kind of figuring out how to cut the hole. And if not, there's always more practice. So let's close in these. We want to make sure that our thick yellow line is touching that coral there. It's not gonna seep out on the side. And the rectangles might kind of be a little bit wonky, but I kind of kept it like that because it thought, you know, it kind of like was more like a beach towel, like maybe laying on the sand, sort of. Not like a perfect rectangle necessarily. Okay, next step. Thin coral, thin yellow. We're gonna cut those lines. We're gonna cut the bags, and then both of them. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna flood the first coral, and then we're gonna flood the yellow. Then we're gonna flood the coral, and then we're gonna flood the yellow. And then let's see. Kind of lost focus here. Let's see. I'm gonna ditch that. Sorry, give me 1 second here. Okay, better. Okay, cut the holes in both. Ooh, that triangle went flying. All right, so coral and then yellow. Don't worry about them touching or overlapping a little bit. And you do have time. You can use your toothpick to spread, you know. No rush on this. We just get it into that segment. And then the next one's going to be yellow. All right. Maybe wipe off your toothpick in between colors. Push it to the edge. It's okay that they're touching and overlapping. That's actually what we want in this situation. After you do one coral and one yellow, we're back to the coral. So then you grab the thin coral again, put it in, wipe the toothpick. Okay, and then the yellow. Takes a little bit of time here. It's a rather large cookie, I would say. All right. I don't know about you, but I am almost done. I've got the coral left. After I get this coral in and spread it, what I'm going to do is take my thin white and I'm going to put some random polka dots around. This is optional. I mean, everything is optional. Nothing is mandatory, but we're going to put the polka dots in to kind of look like little bubbles. And again, you know, don't overdo it too much. But I kind of just put in little clusters, like some 2, some 3, a single, just sort of wherever I wanted them to go. Kind of give it a little bit more design here. All right, and I think I'm happy with that. The writing's gonna go on top, you know, so. All right. Once we get here, we'll let it dry, okay? and I'm making a mess. Yes, I am. All right. Now, of course, you know, if you don't feel confident to add the writing, you know, I don't want to, like I said, anything is optional. I don't want to pressure you into doing it. It's totally fine if you want to just leave the beach towel like this, you know, that's perfectly fine as well. This is a pretty cute design in my opinion. So you don't have to do the writing if you don't want to. But anyway, we do need to let it dry because we will want to do the tassels in a minute. So let's move on to our last cookie, which we're going to be detailing and flooding, or outlining and flooding. And that's our sun. And our sun looks kind of simple, but the hardest part about it is creating that circle in the middle. That's the hardest part. I know that sounds funny, but that is the hardest part. So I had to kind of, you know, when I do it, I use a marker and I draw like a little circle line. However, I just realized this is dark, so I probably really can't see the line even if I were to do that anyway. But I want to create this circle in the middle, and then the rays that come off of it, there's a gap in between. If you can see that, that was just sort of the design. So there's a little space in between. So you want to create this circle. You can make it bigger or smaller, whatever you want, it doesn't matter. And we'll create the circle, and then we'll create the little segments as well, which will take some time. So what we want to grab is our thick yellow here. Okay, so hardest part is the circle. What I like to say is if you're really worried about this, you can make it a little bit smaller, and then if you mess up, you can go around it so that you don't even see the inner circle. So just kind of try your best to make a circle somewhere in the middle and have about 1/2 inch or so between this and the little rays or the edge of the cookie. When I did my cookie yesterday for the pre-recorded class that never got recorded, I had one side that was like totally, it was just totally wonky. And so if that happens too, you can use the hearts, the roses later here to kind of cover it up. If you've got one side, so then I kind of covered it up and it looked fine. And this one today looks much better than that one did yesterday. Okay, so the rays. Again, if that circle was a hot mess, you can go around it, do a different one, or you can wipe that away, whatever you feel like you gotta do to make it look a little bit cleaner. The rays are just like little rectangles, and you can see where the big ones are, and then you have a space in between and you've got the little rectangles. So we'll kind of have to just take a little bit of time. It'll take a little bit of time as we work around the sun to outline these little segments here. Take your time. I'm going to go quiet for a moment because it just takes a little bit of time to go around the sun and doing these little rays. And I want to make sure there's space between the rays and the middle, and then between each ray in particular, some little space in between. If you choose to do something else, let those creative juices flow if you want to do something else. I'm all about encouraging artistic ability, and if you are artistic, some are not, But of course, I encourage, if you want to step out of the box and do something different than I'm doing, then by all means, go for it. Lots of little lines here. That looks so pretty on the chocolate cookie here. I love how it just kind of pops out. Yesterday when I was doing my class on the vanilla cookie, it was like the camera was like having a hard time like distinguishing the colors because they were kind of like running into the cookie. Is very interesting. And so I was thinking the dark chocolate would kind of make you be able to see the lines better in the icing, which is actually true, and I'm happy about that. All right. While you're still working, if you're still working, I'm going to tell you this next part. There's something called cratering, and it is a problem that happens when the icing kind of falls into itself in a very small space. And so I'm super proud of this icing because it was not overmixed. It happens when you like overmix a little bit, but there's like this really short window. Like if you just go a little over it, boom, your icing is kind of the strength of the meringue powder gets stripped, and then you get this cratering. I'm going to show you on this cookie, this is cratering, where here it kind of fell into itself, so you sort of get these like holes and these dents. Not the prettiest thing. Again, I think this icing's pretty good, but I will show you how to fix it if that ever does happen. So the best way to fix that is you go in and you add lines and squiggles into the middle, and what that does is it kind of gives you like an extra barrier in the underneath it so that it doesn't like collapse into itself. I do get this question a lot because a lot of people overmix their icing and this happens. Again, mine I don't think really is doing, I noticed yesterday it wasn't doing it, so I think it's great. But in case, we want to have that so that it doesn't like fall into itself. All right, next step, because everything is separated, we don't have to like wait for each part to dry. We can just go ahead and put that thin icing in, and we don't have to wait, you know, segments. We can put them in every single one. So the only thing I'll say, I'm gonna start with the middle. The only thing I'll say is the very tiny little rectangles, take a very small amount of that yellow, like, you know, try not to over squeeze, just a few drops of that icing will suffice. And you don't have to use your toothpick or your little skewer. If you don't want to, you can just use the tip of your bag to kind of push it towards the edge, and just try not to put too much in, just enough to get it in there. But it is a small surface area, so we don't need a whole lot in there. And then just sort of make your way around the sun, dropping this in. I do turn my cookie to have a little bit better angle when I'm putting it in here. Takes a little bit of time because lots of little segments here. and we'll want to let this dry. Once you get to this point, we'll let it dry here. I love that yellow on that chocolate. It's so pretty. So pretty. If you're still working, keep going. But I will say that all we have left is the detailing. So our 6 cookies have been outlined and flooded, which is half the battle, right? Up until this point, most people feel pretty good about how their cookies look, and that's great. I will say that once we get into the detailing, there's no turning back. You can't really erase anything like you could with the outline if you mess up, but it's going to really complete the cookies, pull them together. The details are what really make a custom, cookie set like awesome, is just those details, because right now they're just like, that's a sun, yeah, kind of, I guess, but when you add the little roses, it just adds a little bit of detail to it that really makes them special, especially like obviously the ones with the writing. Right now you just have a white block and a blue banner, and we're going to add the writing to it. I am going to try to give as many tips as I can to make this as great as possible, but just don't be too hard on yourself if this is your first time, especially with the writing. It is not easy. I've been doing this for a long time, and I guess 6 years. I guess I could always be doing it for longer. 6 years really isn't that much in the grand scheme of things. However, I'm just saying that to say, don't be too hard on yourself, and if they come out kind of funny looking, just laugh about it, and hey, you got good practice, and you can have yummy cookies to eat. So, all right, I think what we're going to do first, because we started on the banner and the bikini first, those ones are going to be the driest, and so let's move the sun over to dry. And I want to probably tackle the swimsuit first, because if we finish the swimsuit, we can feel good. We completed, 2 cookies, and that feels great. And then that'll kind of give us a little bit of a confidence boost, and then we'll do the Hello Summer, which may or may not be the opposite of a confidence booster. Totally fine, but I do want to finish the bikini, because then we'll be feeling a little bit better about ourselves and feel like, we made some progress and we have this completion, which feels great. So I'll show you what it's going to be doing. Mom's keeping her day job. Well, she's really good at her day job, so yes, I would suggest that. This is my day job, so I am, this is what I do full time. I love it. Okay, a couple of things we've got. We have the thick blue and the thick white. So go ahead and grab your thick blue and your thick white, and just make sure it's the one that has the Sharpie line on it. For the top, all we're doing with the blue is first you're going to kind of draw like a little rectangle for the knot in the middle, and then we'll just re-outline her top, okay? And then we take our white and we're going to squiggle it to kind of look like a little ruffle. The squiggles are pretty easy. You just move your hand up and down as you go to the left or the right, depending on if you're left-handed or right-handed. You'll just kind of move up and down as you move. And then we'll do 2 white lines here for the bikini bottom, and then the ruffles there as well. And then that's it, we'll be done with this. So let's do the blue first, thick blue, and we're going to first create that rectangle of a knot in the middle. And it's dry enough that we can do this. However, just the top is dry, the bottom is still wet. So make sure that you're not like poking it with the tip of your icing bag. You just want to kind of lay it right on top, nice and smooth. Jenna, I'm jealous of your day job as a graphic web designer, LOL, and baker on the side. So I went to school for health and fitness, and my goal was to go on to get my get my master's, and to do occupational therapy. That was actually still the plan 6 months ago. But what ended up happening was we got married pretty young, and I wanted to start working because I kind of knew that was going to be. He was still in school when we got married. I had just graduated, so I went to school to be a personal trainer, and I got a job right out of college at a place where I did my internship. I was a personal trainer. I loved it, really loved it. Made really good money for a personal trainer. And then a couple years later, I got sick and I didn't know what it was. Come to find out, it was mono that sort of manifested into chronic mono. And so that led me to quit my day job as a personal trainer, and I went into the cookies, which were at the time a side job, and then became a full-time job. Absolutely loved it. I've been doing it full-time for about 2 years now, and I am never going back. I'm not going back to school. I guess I can't say never, but I'm enjoying it so much that I just don't want to do anything else. Like, I could, but I'm like, I don't want to, and I'm enjoying it so much. All right. So after that little getting off on a tangent here, we're going to do the re-outlining of the bottom part here. We're almost done with these 2 cookies, which is of course a good feeling. Jenna, I love web design. Of course, I can't do it. My dad used to joke that everything that I touch, technology breaks. So I really honestly try to stay away from computers. Literally, that statement could not be more true. Last week, I literally touched the computer and I broke it. And I said, what did I do? I don't understand. And yeah, I guess I turned it off while it was updating, but I didn't know it. So literally touched it and it broke. So yeah, just keep me away from computers. But I do really appreciate, I had a web designer. He helped me with my business card and my website. Super grateful for him. I'm like, I can't do it, but I appreciate it so much. All right, the little ruffles. If you don't really know what we're going for here and you want to see me do it, I will do it. You can watch. You want to touch down to start, and then we're going to move up and down as we go to the right. Same thing here, up and down, go to the right. And just like that, after 1.5 hours, your very first cookie is complete. Great job. This is, quite an achievement because, you started out with a blank cookie and now you've got hopefully something that looks like a swimsuit top. So we got this one done. Next one to finish is the bottoms. So the top 2 lines, I just had the top line kind of cross and overlap the bottom one here. Again, you can do whatever you want, it doesn't matter. Just make sure you're not going too fast because you will break that line there. So you want to just kind of slowly put it on, and somewhere in the middle, it'll kind of overlap. And then again, the little ruffles, which are going to be with the white again on the little sides here. It's a slow kind of moving, right to left or whatever, up and down, I guess you could say, to create the little tiny ruffles. The camera's in the way, so that was definitely not the best squiggle. That's fine. And we have a complete swimsuit. Yay, I hope you feel good about it and how it looks. I have no idea what they look like, so, I've got no clue, but I'm sure they look great. And we can put these in our bakery box, the kit that it was sent in. You can put them in there for safekeeping, or just lay them to the side. You will want to let it dry overnight. So, you know, if you don't eat it right away, you'll want to let it dry. They do taste better after they're dried for whatever reason. Maybe that's my opinion, but I think it tastes better when the icing is dry than when it's wet. But it will take about 8 hours to dry. So you want to let it dry overnight, and then tomorrow you can put them in a Tupperware or put them in like a Ziploc bag to keep them really fresh. And they'll stay fresh. If they're in like a Ziploc bag or something, they'll stay fresh for up to 3 weeks. It's a very long time at room temperature. Everybody's always shocked, oh, you don't put them in the fridge? Nope, room temperature in the little Ziploc or whatever, they'll stay good for a while. So yay, good job. We have 4 more to go here. All right. Let's tackle the Hello Summer. Okay. We will want to grab our worksheet that says Hello Summer. I got a sprinkle in there. Oh, that's fine. Leave it. Okay. So what I want to do is practice on the worksheet. Hopefully that'll kind of help us out just a little bit. It's a little smaller on the worksheet than it will be on the cookie. But this is where we're going to use our black. So the black that we have, this is a thick black, and it's great for writing. And what we want to do is cut that little hole, and maybe a little bit smaller than the outline one. Just a little bit, or if you feel pretty confident with how thick your icing bags have been, then just cut it about that. But you want it to be small, almost like a, you know, the width of a pencil. Like your icing line should be about the width of a pen. Well, yeah, like a number 2 pencil. Maybe not like a fine point pen because that would be too small, but just not too big, because we do want to make sure that we get those clear lines with the letters. So I'll cut, you know, a little bit smaller than I've been cutting with the outline. And I'm going to show you a couple of things that you can do. So for my finished product, what I basically did was just regular cursive. I went in and I did just 1 stroke, you know, with each letter. And then every time that it kind of went like down, like a down stroke, which would be here, 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 and here, I went back in and I added a second line right next to it. That's not necessary, you know, if you really want to just stick with 1 line, that might be easier. But the top of the cookie shows you where those letters are going to be, but you do have to create your own, you know, letters, obviously, and your own lines on the bottom. We're going to see how this goes. Let's practice on the worksheet first. Okay, run your fingers through the sides, make sure it's a hole, and then you can practice on the worksheet here. But again, you can just do 1 line, just like regular cursive first, and then if you really want to get that calligraphy kind of look, what you would do is just kind of create another line to make it look a little thicker on the down strokes here. Again, writing is not easy. You add writing to a cookie, it automatically becomes an advanced class. I will keep that worksheet near me when I'm doing the cookie so I can kind of look at it as I'm doing. I'm going to kind of like glance at it to help me as I'm coordinating how I want it to look on the cookie here. And not easy. So you can practice, you know, on this. But once you practice, we're just going to have to take a leap of faith. Just step into it. It's not going to be necessarily easy, but we can correct it. If it looks kind of weird or we messed up somewhere, we can go back over it again with the black, or we can make it thicker. You know, there's different things you can do, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is going to be hard. So let's just jump right in and go for it. And we'll see what happens. I definitely get nervous. I forget to breathe sometimes. But let's see what we can do here. Okay, so I'm gonna look at my worksheet, and as I go, I'm just gonna kind of continue to glance at my worksheet. And I am going to just do the cursive first, and then I might add the extra line to make it a little thicker maybe, and clean it up a little bit, but we'll see. Yeah, I'll add that other line. I'm kind of leaving a little bit of space for it. Not easy, right? And I've kind of cheated because I've already done a few of these already. So, so to make it a little bit more like calligraphy, I'll go back over and just thicken up certain parts. And I already messed up, that's fine. Whoa, well. It's very hard to talk and do this at the same time. And if you ever kind of wonder how we as professionals can get our writing to look perfect, it's not really us, it's not magic. It's that we are using a projector and tracing basically an image that's projected onto the cookie, which is perfect, and then we just follow. So, you know, most of the time I don't freehand things anymore because you're just aiming for that perfection. So I usually use my projector. But it is always good to practice just sort of like freehanding, because there is a sense of like pride that, you know, comes with being able to do hand lettering. But it's not easy by any means. So I've definitely had a lot more practice, and my writing in the beginning was horrible. It was so bad. It was before I purchased the projector, and I was just like practicing. It was terrible. Because there is such a big difference between, you know, writing with a pencil and then writing with an icing bag. But and then I don't know where y'all are at, if you're done or not, but I'm going to let this, I'm just going to let this sit for a little bit, because we're going to do the summer, but I want to do it at the end, and I'll explain why after. It'll make sense later. But we'll do the summer at the end, and then that will be the last thing we do. But we'll obviously have other ones that we have to complete. So if you're not done yet, I would probably say just pause wherever you're at. Let's move on to the next one, and then you can finish that at the end, because you do have to, you know, get a few others done here. So if it's frustrating to you, we're about to do one of the most fun things, and that is creating waves on our beach cookie. My favorite thing to do. All So you have in your kit, if you purchased it and you're taking the class with me, you have a paintbrush. And we need to get that paintbrush, and we need to get a napkin and a little bit of water. This is where you literally only need a few drops. So a lot of times I will just take a water bottle and fill up the bottle cap with a little bit. Don't need much at all, so I'll take that. We have our paintbrush, and then we also need our thick white icing. And let me show you what we are doing here. All right, you can see on, can you see on this cookie, can you see these little waves here that you can kind of see, like it looks sort of brushed on. I don't know if the camera is really all that great, but what we're going to do is we're going to put thick white icing here. We're going to dip our paintbrush in a little bit of water. We don't want the paintbrush to be sopping wet, but we want it to be a little bit damp. So we're going to dip the paintbrush in the water. We're going to dry it, and it will be damp, and we're going to take it and we're going to drag that white icing into the ocean. And you might have to do it a couple times to really get those defined strokes. But it will look kind of like when the ocean comes up onto the sand and then it pulls back and you kind of get those little bubbles, and oh, I love that. But that was kind of the effect that we're going for. And so we want to make sure that we've got our stuff ready. I'm going to get another paper towel. And so the first thing is where that blue meets the brown, we're going to create that squiggle, that barrier. So this is why it really didn't matter that it, you know, if it was overlapping, because we're going to cover it with the white, and then we're going to take our paintbrush, dip it in some water, and then pretty much completely dry it. It'll still be damp, we just don't want it to be like super wet. And then we're going to carefully just kind of like drag it out to the ocean. And we want it to be, we want to kind of see these lines here. Oh, I love this. This is one of my favorite things to do. I don't get to do it very often enough. But a couple of things here, we can go back over it again. We can also, if it's not super defined, we can do another layer of white. I think that's what I did in the last one. We can basically do it again to kind of make it a little bit more defined. And we're just pulling it, creating these lines. You might have to wipe off the brush from time to time. This is so fun to me. I just love it. I love it. Okay. And then for that, we are done with that part, but we're gonna add a little flip-flops, which are super cute. And we'll do the little ovals with the coral. So we're gonna need our thick coral and our thin coral. We're gonna do thick coral ovals, fill it in with just a little couple drops of the thin coral, and then while it's still wet, we can add our yellow for thong for the sandal, and then this cookie will be done. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed that. It's very fun for me. Done with the water. We don't need the water. I'm gonna flip it back around so that the sand is facing me, so then I can kind of easily see where the flip-flops are gonna go here. The flip-flops, again, you're gonna need your thick coral first, and we're going to create these little ovals. A lot of times you might need to make them smaller than you think that they should be. but because you can always make it bigger, but you can't make it smaller. So just a little, and then I kind of go like a couple times because that sand is kind of puffy. So I do like a couple of outlines. I'm gonna have like 2 ovals right next to each other. And because the sand is so high, I just go ahead and add another layer to it here. And then if you are worried about that cratering, you can do little squiggles inside to kind of keep that structure strong. And we'll need our thin coral. So the thin coral, a little bit inside, not too much, just a couple drops of this. Drop it in. You can use your toothpick or you can use the tip of the bag to spread it a little bit to the outline a little. And then for the thongs, we're going to have our thick yellow. So it'd be better if you have the thick one, the one that has a line on it. The thin one will just kind of run all over the place. This will kind of keep a little bit of definition. And we're gonna do 2 inverted V's, little mountains. About start halfway, you know, go up and then come down like a little V. And just like that, there you have your cute little slippers by the ocean. And we are finished with this cookie. That is it. Love this one. This one's one of my favorites. I love it. Okay, done with that. So we are, what, 3 down, 3 to go. Moving right along. Hopefully y'all are still with me. Still going strong. All right, we're done with the paintbrush. Okay. Next up. Fun in the sun. All right, so this one, I did obviously condense it a little bit to be on the cookie. Again, if your hello was like a hot mess, you don't want to do this, you can bypass this step. If you bypass it, you'll enjoy watching me struggle through it. But we can practice on the worksheet if we would like to. I will probably do it really quickly, and then I will attempt to do it on the cookie. And then we'll do the little tassels. So writing, no writing, whatever you choose to do, but we'll all do the little white tassels. And if you bypass the writing and you want to do the tassels right now, the tassels are with the thick white, and you literally just do little lines. I kind of made them not perfectly straight to kind of look more like a fringe, but that's totally up to you. So I'm gonna practice real quick on the worksheet. If you need more time, if I go too fast and you want to do the writing, you just want to save it for later, of course you can do that. But this is really just to sort of get a feel for how it'll be. I'm just gonna do it quickly. And then again, the easiest way would be to double up on the parts that are thicker. Fun in the sun. I was having fun in the sun today with my dad. And my forehead is gonna be red tomorrow. A little too much fun. I miss going to the beach. It's like you don't really, like, I don't really go, you know, when I have the opportunity, but then it's almost like as soon as you can't go, then you want to go. And it's not like we can't go or just choosing not to go right now because of the virus, but it's like as soon as I wasn't really able to go, then I really, really wanted to go. You know? All right. So here we go. I'm like, where's my... Okay. I'm going to keep that one close for reference and then do this one. We'll see how it goes. All right. I do it at an angle because I write kind of like an angle, so I turn my cookie as if I were doing it like on a paper if I were writing. So you can choose to do anything else you want. Of course, this is what was advertised, so we're gonna try our best here. I know there's not like a whole lot of advice that I could give right now with this other than just take your time. And then also know that you can, if you make a mistake, you can pretty much like go back over it with the black to kind of cover it if you need to do like a double line or something. Concentrating here. Not talking, y'all. Woo! Okay. The good news is, after this cookie, smooth sailing from here. Then in at the end of each letter, so kind of the difference between this and doing like a regular piping is that you stay a little bit closer to the cookie. You don't really like come up a whole lot. So you stay close and then you dip down like every time you're done. You touch down to end the line, but yeah, I might make it look easy, but it is not very easy. As you already know. So yeah, I stay pretty close and I just take my time. Really stay close to it. I'm not like letting it drag as much, you know? Whew. Yeah, hand cramp. Oh my goodness, imagine like 100 of these, like wedding orders when they want their little like monogram or they want I say it with an attitude because oh my goodness, like whoo, like you know, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, like writing that 150, 100, 200, it's so like that you really like your hand starts cramping a lot. I gotta take breaks because it's just too much. So it's so hard. I did add like a little sun beam to the top here. If you want to do that, cool. If not, forget about it. But just something a little extra to the top. and then the white tassels. Boop. And then it'll be done, and then we only have a couple more left. So thick white with the line on it, and then add the little tassels or fringe, kind of not super perfect. You can even kind of squiggle them if you want to. This might kind of sound a little sassy, but I think every person who complains about how expensive these custom cookies are, I want to sort of like have them sign up for a class and be like, okay, you see how easy it is. And like just sort of like, you know, perspective, like just us doing these 6 cookies took, and of course I'm teaching as well, but really, I mean, it takes time, and it is not easy, you know. So it's like I love, and I know this kind of sounds selfish, but I love when people take a class and then they say, wow, like I didn't realize how hard it was, and now I understand why they cost so much, and I'm going to pay that, because you kind of like, you understand firsthand, because you've practiced it and you know what it entails. And so sort of like people form this appreciation for custom cookies, which is great. I mean, I'm still gonna do what I do even if people don't appreciate it, but I cannot tell you how many times a week I hear the comment, oh, that's too expensive. And I just almost want to like say, hey, take this class and then you'll see, you know, like why these are expensive, because really it takes a lot of time. And it is hard, but I think it gets easier. It's just now, it's not necessarily hard now for me. Like sometimes it is, but it's more just time consuming, you know? Okay, great job on this one. This one was very difficult. Very curious to see your pictures of these. Love to see after pictures to kind of compare and just see how y'all did, especially beginners, because a lot of times they impress me more than they think that they will. And they, you know, you're kind of hard on yourself, but really for a beginner to be able to do something like this is quite a feat. So kudos to you. All right, y'all, we got 2 more and then we'll be wrapping up here, okay? Stay with me, we're almost done. This one's super easy. We're giving it just 2 roses. All right, yeah, it is a piece of art, you know? If you think of it that way, then you're willing to pay the price, you know? If you think of it as art and not like, oh, I'm buying cookies, but no, like I'm really buying, you know, I'm buying art that's edible, then it's like, yeah, it just, yeah. I think I've just been kind of more, I'm voicing this now. I don't often really vent about it because it's really not a big deal, but I think just recently it's hard hearing people say, oh, that's too expensive. All right, so these roses here, there's 2 things. We're gonna do the underneath first, and then we'll do the top, which is the spiraling. But what we'll need is our white, thick white, okay, and our thick coral, okay, and then I'll show you what to do for the little dots of icing and then the flowers, and then we'll come back after we do the summer one. I know I said that one would be the last one, but I forgot I need to let it dry before we do the details on top. So first thing we're gonna do, and they can be big, they don't have to be tiny. You probably want them a little bit bigger, depending on how big the size of your hole is. But somewhere, and if you want to cover up some mistakes, like if there's a spot that doesn't look as good, you can kind of put those roses in that particular spot. But the first thing we're gonna do is on the circle in the middle, sort of close to the edge, we're going to create a tall dot of icing, and we really do want it to be pretty high. We don't want it to be a flat dot. We want it to be like a little mountain of a dot. And once we've got one, we're going to do one right next to it. Same thing. A very tall mountain of a dot. And then we're going to create somewhere to the left of it about a 5-petal flower. And of course it doesn't need to be perfect, but just sort of outline something that looks like a 5-petal flower here. And then you're going to fill it with that same icing. We're not grabbing the thin one, we're just going to fill it here. And when we have those 3, we'll take our thick white icing and we'll basically do the same thing, but we're just going to do 1 mound of icing up on the top, and then a 4 or 5 petal flower somewhere near the bottom here. So just a cluster of flowers. Might look totally different than mine, which is fine. And then we want to let it dry for just a little bit. So you have a little bit more time to do work on that. And when you finish, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this next step. All right, we're almost done with this cookie. This one is going to get the summer. So the reason why I waited till the end is because our thick coral, yellow, and blue, we want them, for this, I did the thick coral, yellow, and blue. However, something that initially ran into yesterday is my holes were a little too big, and so if I were to do the writing, it would just be way too big. I wouldn't really be able to get the clear letters like that. And so what I ended up doing yesterday was I transferred the coral and the yellow into the 2 bags that I gave you, where are mine? Somewhere. Oh, these. And then I recut it so that I could get that tiny, hole. So let me just show you here what I kind of mean by that. So this is the width of my coral. This is the width of my yellow, which as you can see is smaller, and that's good. That's the right width that I want. And then my blue, which is about the same as the yellow. Now, if I wanted to, I could transfer the coral one into a new bag and cut it again, and I can cut it smaller. I mean, obviously you can't cut this one here, smaller, but you can transfer it to a new bag and cut again. But that's kind of why I was thinking at the end, if you have, good width and you feel like you could write with it, cool. If not, I'm going to teach you how to transfer, and you will only have 2 bags. So like yesterday, I was only able to transfer my yellow and my coral, and I transferred them to new bags, cut them again, perfect width to be able to put on the banner. So I'm going to show you one, and we'll just kind of go from there, and we'll do the summer, we'll finish the sun, and then we'll be done. I know we're a little bit over time, but hopefully you can stick with me for just 5 more minutes, and we'll finish this up. Okay, so let me show you how to transfer into a new bag. It might sound simple, but people often do have a hard time. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the one that has icing, obviously, and you're going to cut a pretty substantial hole in it, about, like that. We're squeezing it out into the new bag. So you're going to take that new bag and open it up. Okay, we're going to stick this guy inside the new bag. Okay, so you're with me? Stick it in all the way down. one hand is going to go inside the bag, and you're going to be holding that old icing bag there. The other hand is actually going to squeeze it out. So we want to come from the top down. We're going to squeeze the old bag into the new one, like this. Squeeze it. So I'm pulling with my right hand, I'm squeezing with my left. Squeeze it all out, and then I'm left with the icing in the new bag, and the old bag has nothing left. And that's what we want. We can tie this on the top, recut it, and get that smaller hole. All right. So now we can cut. If we make sure, since you got a new bag, make sure you don't cut, you know, too big. This is your second chance here. And then what we're gonna do, you can do it if you need to do it with more than one color. I'm really happy with how my yellow and my blues look, so I'm not gonna do those. Of course, if you need to. And then I'm gonna show you one trick. Again, it's writing, a little bit difficult. I'm gonna show you one trick which may help a little bit, and that is our SUM is going to be on the left half, and our MER is going to be on the right half. So you can use this as a guide. You just want to make sure SUM are in the left half of the banner, to the left of the toothpick, and MER are on the right. If you run out of space, that's a bummer. If you have too much space, what I did yesterday was I added an exclamation mark right after the R because I had a little bit more space over here. So, but if you kind of have a halfway point, then you're working with 3 letters at a time rather than trying to fit in all 6 at the same time. And so we're going to alternate, you know, coral, yellow, blue, yellow, coral, blue. Of course, do whatever you want. If you don't want to do this, you can do something else, or you can leave it blank. You might just say hello, but that's fine too. All right. Now we're ready to eat one. Yep. Okay, and then Jenna, you said, awesome, as always, the part I'm horrible at, bagging the icing. The tipless bags are awesome. I used to do the non-disposable ones, and it was a bit of a headache because you had the tips, so then you had to do wash the tips, throw the bags out. They were expensive, or not the non-disposable ones. You wash the bags. Sometimes I would do the disposable ones where I would throw them away. But now I don't deal with the tips. I just do this, and it's cheap. You can get a bunch of these for like $5. Throw it away. You don't have to mess with the little tips and cleaning them and all. So SUM. Jenna, you got the almond ones, which are yummy. That's a kind of a new flavor. I had vanilla for about 4 years, and then only this January I branched out into doing new flavors. And my mom, she absolutely loves the almond one. It's very good. It's the same as my classic recipe, but I like almond extract instead of the vanilla. So good. All right, I don't know, y'all. I might be adding an exclamation point. We'll see. Oh, no, we're good. Hello, Summer. So cute. All right. Not sure if y'all are done or not. I'm gonna wait a little bit. We've got just the details on the flowers, and then that'll be it. So if we have a smaller hole, that's kind of better for the flowers. I'm gonna kind of go kind of quick here. But of course, if you are not done yet, you can at the end, you know, go ahead and finish up when we hop off. But I will show you the flowers. I'll have a few final statements and then we'll be done. So the flowers, if you're still working, just look up for a quick moment. I'll show you these. We're spiraling. For the roses, we start in the middle. You touch down and then you're gonna lift up and you're gonna spiral around and down. So I'll show you that again. So you go in the middle, you lift it up and you just let it kind of fall down as you go around. That is the same thing with the white. And then the other flowers, you're also going to spiral, but the only difference is when you get to the edge. So I start in the middle, I'm going to spiral, and then when I get to the edge, I'm going to kind of like go with the outline of the flower petals that are already there. And then the same thing with the white. Start in the middle, I'm going to spiral a couple of times. Once I get out to the edge, I'm just going to go with how the petals are. Okay, line them up so we can see our work. I'm gonna just close out here. If you still are working, awesome, take your time. If you have any questions, let me know, reach out. I know for a fact Jenna and my dad and my mom were here. I am so grateful that y'all took the class. I hope that you had fun. Thank you so much for interacting, because that does make it more fun for me, so I'm not just kind of talking to myself or screen. But I hope that you had fun. Jenna, I hope that this was a good first time. If you ever want to take another class, I would be happy to have you. My parents, they come to pretty much every class, which is fun. But I'll just kind of say, if you have leftover icings, you can keep them in a Ziploc bag for up to 3 weeks. They'll stay good if you want to keep that icing and make cookies and use the icing. Again, you already know cookies will stay good for 3 weeks at room temperature in a bag. I usually do a door prize, but this time I'm not doing a door prize. What I'm going to do is everybody who bought a ticket for the class and purchased a kit, I'm going to send you your very own discount code that you can use to receive a discount on a future virtual class, if that is something that you would like to do. And you can use it for any virtual class in the future. Again, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, a great summer, and hopefully we all get to the beach sometime soon. And stay safe. So much love to you and your family. Thank you so much. Let me know if you have any questions, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon. But bye, thank you so much, and we had so much fun. All right, see y'all next time.